when I first got my account set up, I just kind of ran around my home and scanned anything that was new or used that I could sell. That was the first thing I did before I even went to a store and actually purchased anything.
Maybe like 2 or 3 months ago, my daughter woke up by herself, and then I went downstairs and she served her own breakfast, and I'm just like, what? No. That's my job.
If it's within your budget, everyone getting into OA should try out at least some type of leads list. Yes, you're going to get leads every day, but more importantly, it's going to open your eyes to those new sources. It's going to show you those recurring sales, and it's going to show you all those rabbit trails. Cheers.
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 Welcome back to the Doughboys podcast. I'm your host, Logan, joined today by my two lovely, studly co-hosts, Formosa McGill, flipping it with Cisco. Today we also have a special guest, Shayla, otherwise known as the Aussie mom in the FBA world. So Shayla, we're super excited to have you here. Love it if you could kind of start us off by telling everyone a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into selling on Amazon.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for having me. I am an avid listener. I think I even commented on some of your videos. I really liked the early ones where you guys talked about like Dogecoin and things like that. So those ones were fun.
We got to bring back that banter for sure.
I'll join. Let me know.
Yeah.
I definitely was partaking in that. So that was cool. But so started selling in March of last year. So a little bit about my background, I guess. So born and raised in Australia, moved over here to come to college. I think it's about 16 years ago now. Came over, played volleyball in college, was lucky enough to do that. And then sort of lucky enough again to be offered jobs, a job right out of college to stay. And so I spent 10 years in college athletics, primarily in volleyball, played volleyball in college, and then continued to coach. And then sort of in the last few years, so I was in the Midwest, came out to California about 8 years ago. Once we had our second child, decided to sort of give away that I was going to stay home. So I was working. We had our first child and I was still working. And then when we decided to have our second child, we decided that I was going to stay home. And so was stay-at-home mom with the two little ones. They're now 4 and 2. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I've said this before, I don't know how it happened. I think it happens. This is the way it is for a lot of people. It just started popping up on my Instagram feed about Amazon FBA. And so didn't really take much notice in thinking I could do it, but was just following for quite a while, probably 3 to 4 months. I was sort of following, thinking it was too good to be true. Beginning of the new year in January, February, I thought, okay, what's the worst that could happen? It's kind of free to sign up. Signed up, got an account March of last year. And yeah, the rest is history.
Nice. I do have a question, just because a lot of the guests that we've had they're not like you and me where we have kids and have to kind of balance everything out. So can you kind of talk a little bit more about how the balance is, kind of trying to still be there for your two kids and then balancing the whole business aspect of it? Give us like your perspective of everything.
Yeah. So in the beginning, it was sort of, when I first got my account set up, I just kind of ran around my home and scanned anything that was new or used that I could sell. That was the first thing I did before I even went to a store and actually purchased anything. And again, because I had, I think my youngest, she was not even a year old. I had a lot of new baby things, or, you buy tons of baby stuff that you don't actually use.
Mm-hmm. And so a bunch of baby things.
Yes. And then sort of as I got, I'll admit you kind of get a little addicted to it in the beginning, especially when you see those sales start rolling in and you think, well, again, you still in the back of your mind think it's too good to be true, but you keep going. And then, so basically for me, it was my oldest boy, he was in preschool, so he was sort of going half days. And then the littlest, during nap time, I was working. And then when the kids go to bed at 7, I was working. And so it was never really taking away from me being a mom and being the mom that I wanted to. Just after Q4. So, I was doing every second while the kids were napping. And then as soon as the kids would go to bed, I was up until way past midnight, just sourcing, scouring. And then things kind of got to be a little too much with, around like, it wasn't even necessarily Q4 just because of the volume of Q4. It was more just that I was scaling pretty quickly. And that's when I got a prep center. I got a prep center in January because I just was at my max. Like when you have kids, there's just you run out of time. And this was never supposed to be sort of like a job. It certainly turned into like a really amazing job. Didn't necessarily wasn't supposed to be that way where I was taking time away from the kids, which it kind of was starting to get to that point. Now I'm still doing, my youngest is 2. She still takes a 2-hour nap in the afternoon. So I'm doing afternoons. And then, when the kids go to bed, I'm still working late. So my oldest is in preschool. I'm going to pre-K. So that gives me, I've just got the one little one at home. So it'll be interesting to see when she goes to preschool, which won't be for a few years, but it's definitely a challenge. Because this is not supposed to be, I'm fortunate. This is just sort of a side hustle that I wanted to do. It's not our main source of income. And so I had that flexibility a little bit, but I can't imagine if I was in a position where I really needed it to be a source of income, how hard it would be to do it with kids, especially if you're packing boxes yourself and you don't have a prep center, or we just recently hired some VAs too. So I'm starting that outsource program, but it's really, I can only imagine how hard it would be if I had to do both.
Yeah, 100%. And I can definitely kind of relate with what you were saying, just because at least for me, I have, now she's 8, but when I originally started, she was 5. The kids require attention. They want your attention. They want to help, even though instead of helping, they kind of, slow you down a little bit. But I know for me, the biggest thing, I love the summertime, because I'm the one who takes my daughter to the bus stop and takes her to school, right? And so I have to wait till, get her ready for school, get her to the bus stop by, 7:30, and then wait for the bus to go. And then I have some of my own free time. But summertime hits from 6 a.m. till, whenever I want to stop, I'm good. She can sleep in. So summertimes are fun on my end.
Yeah, I don't know what a sleep in is because they're 4 and 2. So I'm not at that phase yet, or even just getting themselves breakfast yet. But I guess it'll be nice, but I don't want them to grow up at the same time. So.
Yeah. It's funny because just maybe 2 or 3 months ago, my daughter woke up by herself, and then I went downstairs and she served her own breakfast, and I'm just like, what? No. That's my job.
When did that happen?
You want that, but you don't want that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. So there's a lot of parts here. Moving from Australia to the United States. So that was for college.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's had an impact? What was that like for you? Difference of, just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I came over here obviously to go to college, but it was really more the volleyball side of things, to be honest with you. So I was playing high-level volleyball in Australia, and it's popular, but not really on a huge scale like it is in college sports over here. And so I was already playing as high as I could. I was playing for the national team. I was spending a little bit of time overseas anyway. And so the moving part wasn't really that big of a deal. It was just how do I continue to extend my volleyball career? It was either go to Europe and play professional, or it was sort of come over here. I could get a degree. I'd always sort of wanted to be in, not coaching. I didn't know I wanted to be in coaching, but I thought I wanted to be a teacher, which kind of goes hand in hand. But I thought I wanted to be a PE teacher or a teacher. I knew somebody who had gone to Europe to play pro, and they had blown out their knee, and they were 26, 27 years old, came back to Australia. Not that they didn't have anything to show for it, because the career that they had was amazing and the experiences that she had in Europe. But in terms of coming back and sort of, wait, my career's over volleyball wise, I need to get a job. She didn't have a degree. She was able to figure it all out. Trust me, a degree is not everything, but in terms of what she wanted to do, she didn't really have anything. She wasn't sure. And so I sort of liked this route, because I knew that if, volleyball wasn't what I wanted to, my goal was maybe go to college over here and then go to pro. And then I could always have something if I wanted to continue doing teaching. Teaching, you do need a degree for. And so that was it wasn't necessarily coming to the US was really impactful, because I was already traveling playing. It was just more, this was sort of the next step for me. on the volleyball front. As I, then all of a sudden it was, wow, you could make a career in coaching after.
Right.
And again, I was fortunate enough to be offered a job my senior year before I'd even graduated to go be an assistant on a team at a school. And so it was just sort of, again, I was like, I think I'm good with the, few injuries here and there. Not sure I really wanted to go to Europe and play pro, but continuing to coach and teach, which was all kind of what I wanted to do.
Do you think that progression there, player coming to college, United States, coaching, like how does that impact you currently in this like Amazon side of business? Do you see you're using your degree, the coaching experience you had, all that?
So I'm not doing sort of any coaching or anything like that in the Amazon world. I did consider, I did have a lot of other moms and things like that reach out to me and ask if I was doing it. And there was a moment where I thought, I could do that, but I also just sort of felt like, whoa, hold on a second. I've barely been doing it for very long. And I just, even though coaching's in my blood or teaching, I just didn't feel like I was at the level in terms of the Amazon world to really propel that. But I think maybe the impact that it's had for me is, coaching and teaching, it takes time. And so even in this business, I never felt this need to like get rich quick. It was always, I knew that there were going to be steps that I needed to take, as opposed to, don't get me wrong, there are people who just crush it out of the gate. And then there are other people who are like, I'm supposed to be rich already. And I never really had that. And I don't know if that was just because coaching in general, things don't just happen overnight. There's a lot of training involved in coaching and playing. And so maybe that's where that came from. Maybe that had an impact in that way, that I never felt like I had to like rush. This was not supposed to be a huge job or a huge income earner. And so maybe that helped as well.
Yeah, for sure. Everything is a process, and it takes, its steps to get to the goals that you have. Now, I just have a random like sourcing niche question. So we have a good friend, Phil by Amazon, and he's big into wrestling. So for like the longest time, while East Bay was still good and dandy, he used to love like sourcing wrestling gear, because he knew wrestling and he enjoyed like looking at the gear. Do you kind of like find the same joy of sourcing any like volleyball equipment or anything like regarding any of the sports that you're really into?
Yeah, I tend to do a little. Volleyball's pretty niche. Well, it's not niche, but obviously my husband being in soccer, like there, I tend to do a little bit more soccer stuff. In the beginning, I did a lot of baby because that's what I knew. What do other parents want or need? I don't do a ton of volleyball. There's not too much equipment in terms of, it's fairly basic, kind of like soccer too, but in terms of you wouldn't go and buy a volleyball like you would just going buying a soccer ball. Typically you show up to practice at volleyball and the coach has already got like 100 volleyballs there for you, and you don't necessarily bring a volleyball to practice with you. Whereas soccer, everybody has a soccer ball at home. Even if you don't play it, you typically have a soccer ball at home. So I wish, I'm always looking.
I hear you. And the reason why I ask is because like for beginners in general, they always ask, okay, what is the best category? And the typical answer for anybody that you ask who's been doing it for a while is any category is really good. And really it's just whatever you find more natural to you. Like, for example, you're more familiar with soccer equipment and stuff along those lines. For me, I just am a kid at heart, so I always just gravitated to Legos. And then I don't know about Logan. I guess he gravitated to books when he started, but he is a little bit of a nerd.
Cisco always finds out a way to bring up Legos in every episode. I swear.
I got to stay on brand,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I did the baby thing for sure in the beginning, because like I said, the first thing I did was just go through everything. And so the baby thing was it definitely wasn't easy, but that was sort of, okay, I sort of knew if I saw a sale or something that there was a good chance that it was probably going to be pretty profitable. But yeah, again, as a lot of people do, once you've been in for a while, over a year, there's nothing. I mean, I've been really strong on like tools and improvement, right? Lately, we don't own a toolbox at our home at all, but hey, it's
a great category.
But it is a great
go.
category.
So
yeah, every category is great, but it's definitely easier to start with some that are you're more familiar with, for sure.
Definitely.
So, Shayla, I'd love to kind of dive into your growth trajectory. I'm looking at an old post you made. Basically, your first 9 months, you had really consistent growth. So, I'd love if you could, kind of break down what you think might have attributed to that and how you were able to grow your business month to month on such a consistent basis.
Yeah. So again, I think I was really lucky. So I'm 36, married, 2 kids, pretty good credit. And so I think that definitely gave me a head start, right? My husband and I had a little bit of capital, probably way more than most. Whereas if I started this in college, I would have not had any credit because I moved over here from Australia. I would have barely got $1,000 on a credit card. And so I say that because I really do believe that was helpful in my journey, because I had the ability to sort of decide how much I really wanted to spend every month or what I could put into. And again, very quickly had the ability to scale because sort of the position that I'm in. Like I said, if I was in college, I would have barely had $5,000 by the end of my first few months, probably. So I think that allowed me. And then I think just my experience being a little bit older, starting this journey, I think too, like I got 2 kids. I can't just like go and blow money. Not that anybody does, but it's still money that could go to my kids or savings for my kids and things like that. And so I think that played a role in the beginning of just slowly building. And then again, every time the kids went for a nap, I was watching every YouTube video, like a lot of people do. You watch every video you can just to continue to improve. And then once I started to get a little bit of success in terms of my sales and my margins and things, I just kind of kept going, spending a little bit more, making sure that I was making the right decisions. And so I had the capital right away. And I could have quite easily have spent that within the first few months. I definitely wouldn't recommend that at all. But I think that's why I was able to steadily grow. And every month it was like, okay, great. I hit 10,000. All right, and I wasn't much. It was just, let's just beat 10,000. It was never go from 10 to 20. Sometimes it worked out that way, but that was never like, I wasn't trying to jump these huge amounts. It was always like, even if I stayed the same, I was still very happy. And so I kind of stayed the same, if not dropped a little bit in the last few months, but obviously other things have contributed to that. There's not much huge elaborate story, but it was really just like, if I was making mistakes or something, I would sort of pull back a little bit. I got a couple IP alerts and that just kind of freaked me out. So I just stopped when maybe some others would have just continued to go and go. I really just kind of took my time. Maybe that coaching mentality or training and practice mentality, things don't just come right away. And so I knew that I had some time.
What did that look like being like married? Were you just like, hey, I saw this thing, it's a potential money making? Was that a decision, or did you just go into it and then your husband was like, what's with all these boxes?
I think there definitely was of course he's like totally supportive of anything I do. We're both, he's in coaching. We've always supported each other's teams. I mean, when you're a coach's wife or a coach's husband, you're all in. Yeah, I was interested. Yeah, I don't really know. It just, there was definitely like, hey, there's going to be some boxes showing up at the door. And all of a sudden, like there was even more than what I would expect. I was like, oh, whoa. But again, I think he just trusted me that, again, my process, it wasn't like I just went bang with, $20,000 spend goal in a month or anything like that. It was, pretty steady goings. And then it was, hey, I think I'm going to take out, get a Amex Plum and start doing that and go for it, and then by the time I was really pulling in some, really my spend goals were really up. It was during the fall soccer season. So he was so preoccupied that
he's at practice. He's like, I don't know.
Basically from August to December, he was in soccer mode. So, they play Wednesdays and Saturdays. So I would be watching ESPN. I'd be watching their games and there'd be boxes everywhere. So that was my prep time, watching the game. It also kept my mind off the game because I'm a bit of a nervous wreck for his game. So it actually worked out pretty well that I prepped while I watched on ESPN. By the time he came home, or if they're away, the boxes would be gone. So it kind of worked out nice. But yeah, just like any relationship, he fully supported me. So I definitely know in the beginning, he was like, this is too good to be true. And I was like, I know, I feel the same way, but this is working.
That's such a heartwarming story. I love that.
Thanks.
You see, Josh, you have to have a partner that supports you and pushes you. Makes everything a lot easier.
Why does Josh need to know that?
Because Josh asked the question.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I feel targeted.
We're friends.
Just believe, man. Just believe. It's okay. So I mean, as Logan touched on, like, you've had a pretty good trajectory. What have you found to be the hardest thing during that trajectory for you, like scaling and everything?
So before I got the VAs, it was obviously just time and just trying to, or even just the prep center in general. Like I said, I kind of joked that I was like prepping, watching my husband's games and things, but it was trying to manage that with the kids and things. We're living in sort of a smaller property because when we moved down here to San Diego, we sort of just moved into a townhome just to try to get a lay of the land before we moved to somewhere bigger. And I mean, I was having to do double the work because I didn't have an extra room where I could, or a garage. So I was sort of getting all the products, unpacking everything while the nap was going on. Then I'd sort of have to rebox everything so the kids wouldn't get all into the stuff. And then having to sort of start that process all over again until I was officially done and closing the boxes. And so that was just the time. Like anybody, there's only so many hours in the day. And so sourcing and prepping, if you're not sourcing, I was typically prepping and vice versa. And then in the beginning, I think I've said this before, like just finding the leads too was difficult. And I've mentioned this before, like when I joined one of Logan's lists, that was a huge turning point for me because I feel like I've really done the list really well where I don't buy what's on the list, but I am able, that's sort of a great starting point for me. And so I was sort of starting to struggle there too, where I just don't even know where to start. How do I even keep sourcing? You're just scouring the internet, trying to find anything that will stick. And then when I joined the leads list, I think it was around August, that just gave me such a huge boost because I was able to go somewhere every day and then just rabbit trail off of those. Whereas before I'm like, Target, Walmart, I was like just that whole thing. And so that gave me confidence too, to start spending more once I realized, I got that starting point with the lists and then rabbit trailing. And then you just build confidence from there, really.
Yeah, I think that's such an underrated thing about leads lists in general. It's just the ideas that it gives you. Because I've kind of did the same thing. Like when I first started with everything, my main place to source was, Target, Walmart, Kohl's. And then that's basically where my mind kind of stopped, right? And then I would join these leads. And I remember the first leads list I joined, it was Amazon Kingpin, like random exclusive like list that he put out for like 2-3 months. And one of the things that was on there was a Delta faucet. And I would have never thought to look at like faucets or any like sink materials or anything. And then that ended up just being like a gold mine for like a while. And so it's just, you're able to kind of just use leads list to find different stores to source from and just different products in general that you would have never thought to source. That's
exactly for me, especially the stores or the products. I was starting to feel very overwhelmed. I had also paid for a coaching course like right out of the gate, and I basically threw away my money. And so I had sworn off of, that was started in March. I think that was in April, May. And so I was just like, oh, you idiot. Why did you do that? And then I swore off of buying anything. So from, April until August, I was like, I'm not buying anything. I watched every video possible and was still sourcing, but I still just needed something. And I think I even reached out to Logan. I was like, look, I don't know, was exactly what I needed. Because again, people are like, don't do leads lists. And I was like, well, because you're not supposed to buy them. And then when I realized, well, no, there's a whole different rabbit trail and a whole different way to use a leads list. And I was like, oh, with all this work that I had put in to teach myself and to go, I knew that was just going to be the perfect fit. And so you can actually kind of see it in a chart if you go through my Instagram from like August when I started using the list. That's when things really started to trend up for me. So yeah, I would definitely recommend them for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everyone, if it's within your budget, everyone getting into OA should try out at least some type of leads list.
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to get leads every day, but more importantly, it's going to open your eyes to those new sources. It's going to show you those recurring sales, and it's going to show you all those rabbit trails. I think that's super, super important. Everyone, if you're getting into OA, should try some type of lead list.
Yeah. And even if it's just for 1 month. I mean, I think that's the thing that you had said to me, which was sort of like the sealer for me. It was like, you just can try it for 1 month. And if you don't like it, you can get out. I was like, I can afford to spend this much money. And even if it doesn't work out, I'm probably going to get that money back in a month. Yeah. But I can't imagine that if you're using the list right, that you're going to not be happy after a month, whether it's your list or anybody else's. If you're using them right, you're probably most likely going to stay for a little while anyway.
Yeah.
And people like pick and choose which lists work for them. I mean, different people have different things they like to see.
Yeah. OA Hunt is a really good company for having variety depending on what you're looking for. They have lists price ranging from $29 to $3.99 a month. So very, very different in terms of what they offer.
For sure.
Who is this?
OA Hunt.
OA Hunt.
Yeah.
I just like that mentality. I feel like that's a big thing in like us as coaches as well, book of just like taking someone else's like idea and then twisting it onto like what you like. And it's just, it takes that grunge work of like, I don't want to start this paper or whatever it is. Yeah. And it's like, there's something already there. And then I'm just kind of running with it.
Yeah. You're exactly right. That's exactly like coaching you. Yeah. There are things you loved as, coaching, those things I absolutely loved as a player and the drills and things that I did. So then I translated them into my coaching, my own teams.
Yes.
And then your things you hated. Yeah. So you either don't do them or you make it so you like them. That's, the same for Amazon. There are things, certain, whether it's categories, lists, anything, you always got to tweak it because, these are very individual businesses. Someone can tell you, the blueprint, you still have to make the final decisions for yourself.
Yeah. You have to be able to pivot when things change. You have to make sure you check the weather outside before you go outside and, wearing shorts and it's 50 degrees outside.
So Shayla, where can everybody find you on social media?
So I just have Instagram. So it's at Aussie Mom. I think it's FBA. At Aussie Mom FBA. I feel like I've been slacking on my content right now. We hired VAs in March and I spent every second I could trying to train and diving as deep as I could, knowing that it would hopefully pay off, and it's truly paying off. I mean, I just spent a couple of days in New York with my brother. If I was on my own, I would have been like freaking out thinking that I was going to have to work or do whatever. And so, I need to up my content game, but
you and me both.
I would,
We'll commit today. Starting today, you and I are going to be posting.
Okay, sounds good.
Sounds good. You accountable.
I want to pay it forward too. I've reached out, I think, other than meeting Josh today, I think I've reached out to Logan and Cisco multiple times over the past, 6 months to a year. And so I want to pay it forward too. So if anybody has any questions or anything, I would love to answer or help any way I can. I'm not quite interested in coaching, but I'm very open to, just chatting and answering questions and things like that. And so I would love to pay it forward because that's what you do. And so please reach out to me if anybody needs anything, for sure.
Awesome. So you guys definitely go check out Shayla on Instagram. Shayla, thank you very much for joining us today. Viewers, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.